Welcome to Strong and Weak Beats #1. Using pages from my #1 bestseller book, The Best Music Theory Book for Beginners that sold over 5,000 copies. My name is Dan Spencer. I'm your music mentor. The full playlist with over 100 music theory lessons is in the video description. I recommend watching them in order. And now, back to the lesson. So talking about strong and weak beats. In every measure of most time signatures, there are going to be stronger and weaker beats. Now, this is part of what gives music life. If all beats were equally strong and equally weak, what would we have? We would have a pulse, not beats. So we actually want some beats to be strong and some beats to be weak. Now, alternating strong and weak beats gives music momentum and movement. It gives it feeling. It gives it dynamics. It makes it exciting. Because would you really want to listen to just a pulse all day that's just bop, 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 bop? Is that exciting? No, it's not. We want beats. We want things to change. We want things that are different. So now let's understand, why are some beats strong and some beats weak? Well, stronger and weaker beats change how notes that align with those beats are stressed when they are performed. Now, when I say stressed, I mean how much emphasis is put on them. So this means that together as a European Western music culture, we've all agreed that certain beats get more emphasis than others with certain time signatures. Every time signature has its own series of stronger and weaker beats. Now, other music cultures, like that of India and Bali, have different music rules and different cultures with different strong and weak beats. So, for example, in 4/4, in our music culture, we say strongest, weak, strong, weakest. Whereas in Indian classical music, there is a sort of time signature called teen tal that acts like 4/4, but does not at all follow strongest, weak, strong, weakest. It's a completely different thing and not at all the same. So that's why I'm saying that in our music culture, or in the music culture that is descendant from Europe, I'm also descendant from Europe. Both my grandparents came to the United States from Europe, so I think of myself as being Europe descendant. That from that music culture, every time you see 4/4, the series of beats is going to be strongest, weak, strong, weakest, but we'll get to that in a moment. So we have some useful color coding for y'all. So strongest beats are going to be green, strong beats are going to be yellow, weak beats are going to be orange, and weakest beats are going to be red. Now, if you happen to be colorblind, what you want to look out for is the ST for strongest. So the difference between strongest and strong is the ST, and the difference between weak and weakest is the ST. And again, that's only for those of you who happen to be colorblind. So let's look indeed at the strong and weak beat colors for 4/4, and indeed you can see we have strongest, weak, strong, weakest, and that is the order of the beats in 4/4. Now in 3/4, it's a little different. There is no strong beat, there's only a strongest, and then there's a weak and a weakest beat. That's just how 3/4 works. So all songs, for the most part, that you hear in 4/4 and 3/4 follow this series of strong and weak beats. Memorize the order of the strong and weak beats in 4/4 and 3/4. For 4/4, it's strongest, weak, strong, weakest, and 3/4, it's strongest, weak, weakest. Memorize that, because that is going to be super important, not just for this music theory, but for a bunch of music theory moving forward and other modules and chapters in this course and in this book. In this lesson, you are going to understand the power of low sounds and how low sounds actually play into the series of strongest, strong, weak, and weakest beats in different time signatures. So the natural human tendency is actually to perceive lower sounds as being more important and more powerful than higher sounds. So a low sound would be like thunder rolling in the distance is a great example of a really low sound. A higher sound would be like a bird chirping. Now, in many modern music genres, the strongest beats in the measure will actually have lower sounding instruments on them, and the weaker beats are going to have higher sounding instruments on them. And we're going to explore this with the drum kit, and we're actually going to see that the patterns that drummers play in these different time signatures actually line up with lower sounds happening on the stronger beats and higher sounds happening on the weaker beats. So let's take a look at some strong and weak beats with the drums. Since there is a drum set sound or digital drums or drum samples in most songs in modern genres, we're going to use the drum set because you're going to be able to figure out a lot of songs and understand the time signature through the drums because the drums are everywhere. So we're going to see how the drums actually play different parts or different elements of the instrument and help define strong and weak beats. So you will see that in the notation for the kick drum, it actually is going to show a stem down below line 3. This is an exception to the rule that all notes need to be stem up when they are below line 3 of the staff. So let's look at our two main parts of the drum that we're going to talk about today. The first is the snare. The snare is this metal drum right here. You see that right there with the number 1 on it? And the second drum is a kick drum. And it's that big old thing there on the floor. So now we're going to listen to the difference between a snare and a kick. This is the drum number 1 that you see on your screen right there. And you can see that the notation for the snare drum actually has the note head on space 3 of the staff. Now we're going to listen to an example of a kick drum. And as you can see, the kick drum, the note head is going to be in space 1 of the staff, but the stem is actually going to be pointing down. This is one of these very rare exceptions where you'll have a stem down note below line 3 of the staff. So this is what the kick drum sounds like. There you go. Let's hear that again. Excellent. Now let's look at example 15, where we're going to have the kick on the strongest and strong beats and the snare on the weak and weakest beats. So it's going to go kick, snare, because in 4/4, the order of the strong and weak beats is strongest, weak, strong, weakest. So this is example 15 with the low sounds on the strong and strongest beats and the higher sounds, the snare, on the weak and weakest beats. Let's give it a listen. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I also do recommend watching these book examples. Okay, now let's look at example 16. This is going to be a snare and a kick in 3/4. Now the pattern is going to change here because there's only one type of strong beat in 3/4, and that's the strongest beat on beat 1. There's a weak and weakest on beat 2 and 3. So that means we're actually going to have 2 snares to every 1 kick. Let's give that a listen and see what that sounds like. Strongest, weak, weakest. 1, 2, 3. Listen to it one more time. I'm going to count this time through it. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I will see you in the next lesson. Oh, but it's not over yet. Click here to watch the next video lesson or up here for the full video playlist.